Hello, everyone. How's it going? It's day November 11th. 11. I like this. There's many ones in this day. Um, my name is Justin Jeffress, and I'm an evangelist at Amazon. I teach you how to build Alexa skills, and I am here with.
I'm Alison and I am a vui designer here at Amazon. I help third parties build awesome skills for Alexa.
Sweet, yes. And we are here today to continue on with our 12-part series on voice first design. And we created a simulation game called. Al-
My Cactus.
All right. We didn't have that planned, so I wasn't sure how that was going to go.
Oh, for it's still early enough in the morning. The neurons took half a second to fire and actually remember the name of the skill, but we got there.
Cool. All right.
It was a late night. We had real cactus problems at home last night. I was telling Justin earlier we had a little pest invasion. So I didn't get a ton of sleep last night because I was eradicating pests in my cacti.
Yes.
Um,
Have
which
a bunch.
maybe that'll show up in the skill someday.
Right. And you have a whole bunch of cacti in the background. Let's see
Yeah,
if we go
these
full
this is
screen on you.
actually this is a quarantine area. These are healthy cacti that have been like preventatively treated. The affected cacti are on the other side of the room in quarantine. I hope that's enough.
Right.
But maybe this will show up in our skill at some point. Who knows? Enough of what I know about cacti has shown up in the skill already. So now I'm an expert in three kinds of pests. This is how bad my pests were. So I think I know who the culprits were, though, where they came from. So I think it's under control. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's funny. Yeah. I maybe in season two we'll have a new dynamic added to the game where
Pest control
yes,
mode.
you get to add a whole bunch of different ISP related stuff to that as well. So
Oh
cool.
gosh.
All
Yes.
right.
All right.
Yes.
Well, before we bite off way more than we can chew, we should get started. So start with some housekeeping things and some reminders. Um, so if we remember correctly, our first episode, we kind of scoped out this skill and talked about our concept and figured out, what features we wanted to support. Pest control mode is not in our scope, just to be clear. And then we worked on our last episode, episode two. We worked on doing a little happy path, which we just one cycle through the skill. We branched off a little bit, and we started to see how we could elaborate on the storyboards when it's the second, third, 10th, 100th, 1000th time through the skill for our player. So in this episode, we are going to work through a couple of actions, designing our script and our responses for different things that the player is going to ask us when they do come back to the skill. And we're going to probably complete a couple of actions, and then maybe we'll get into some more complicated stuff before we kind of wrap up our storyboards. And then in the episode following that, we're going to actually test these things. So yeah, let's look at the calendar. So on Friday, we're actually going to have finished storyboards, and we're going to pretend to be our own player, and you all are going to pretend to be our player. You will be our players, and we're going to throw everything we can say at the storyboards. Hopefully they stand up and we have all of the responses we need written. If not, we will go back to storyboarding and we will write those responses for the things that we missed. And then we're going to take those things next week, and we are going to create prototypes with those exact storyboards.
Cool. Yes. So we're moving
Yeah.
right along. So yes, we're going to continue on with building out the storyboard. And yeah, for those of you who didn't tune in, or it was last Friday when we last presented. Hello, Hawk 2000. Thanks for tuning in. Let's go through, slightly like review what it is that we did to this point.
Yeah. Yeah, let's do that. So a reminder, first of all, of our scope, the things that are supported. Again, no pests in this version. We, of course, need to start a new cactus. We decided we're not just going to give someone a cactus, we're going to help them feel a little bit more invested by asking them something about themselves and then assigning a cactus to them, which Justin and I will read through our storyboards actually. Or I will kind of walk us through them, and we'll go ahead and act them out in the next episode. So we also need to water our cactus, and then we decided, since cacti need sunlight but they need to not be too cold, we're going to open and close blinds as an action for keeping our cactus healthy. We're also our cactus is going to grow, and we need to inform our player of that. We need to celebrate the growth of our cactus in some way. Our cactus is going to get flowers. We're going to award badges, all kinds of retention mechanisms in here. We want our player to play every single day. So we have a lot of work to do if we're going to support all of this in our script. And then, of course, our cactus is going to have a sense of humor. So, as we discussed in the last episode, which I'll show you these storyboards momentarily, this can get very complicated very quickly, because even opening the skill, we have all kinds of messages that the player could hear based on if they've been to the skill before, how long they've been playing, etc., etc. Do they even have a cactus? Is it alive or not? The cactus might be dead. It might be recently dead. It might have been dead for weeks, and for some reason our player keeps checking on it. I don't know.
Right.
People. Oh, this is good time for a little bit of wisdom. Something that I learned, that also another wise designer at Amazon taught me, was players, especially in gaming and especially in simulations actually, or anytime you're getting really good feedback about the action that you're taking, that people will try to do some really weird stuff. They'll go to some extreme. They'll be like me. They'll ask the My Farm skill to buy a chicken 900 times in a day. People will press their luck, so to speak, and just like they'll try to kind of see the limits, test the limits of a game. And this is not limited to voice gaming at all. This is classic. Like back when I used to play simulator games, like who didn't build an overly dangerous roller coaster in Roller Coaster Tycoon? Who didn't try to have 30 Sims in their family all at once living under one roof when they played The Sims? Like, people test their limits. So let's plan for that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So is our cactus dead, or is it long dead, or is it alive?
Right, and that was one of the things that when we were in the last episode working on, I can't remember exactly how many minutes I had, 15, 20, to build out the actual flow chart that we were going to start with. All of these scenarios and situations popped up, and it made it go, oh, well, we have to draw this shape and this line and connect this over here, and then Gozu was like, oh hey, check to see if it's dead first. So it's like, okay, so the whole time that we're focusing on all of these like contextual things, we're being distracted from figuring out like what's actually taking place, what's the actual conversation that's taking place between the skill and Alexa. And so the nice thing about storyboards that we saw at the end of last episode is that we're able to focus on, like, because we're able to focus on what's going on in that current context, we're not like, we have improved focus. So we're not constantly getting distracted by, oh shoot, there's this other thing that we have to think of. It's like, put a pin in that thought, finish the current
or wait,
story.
erase everything you just did because we forgot to do this check up here.
Right.
Like, oh, what shape should that box be to represent, let's not waste our time on that either.
Right. So it's like you're able to say, okay, you know what? This is the current scenario we're working on. Let's put a pin in the other thought that we had. Do the the end to end for that thing that we're working on, and then go back to the spot that you put the pin in and continue on there. So it allows you to identify where the conversation will branch and then come back to it. So yes, that's one of the benefits of doing storyboarding, is we're able to like cover all of these bases. And like we mentioned before, when I was starting to implement the skill, we identified some gaps in the design, and it was really easy for me to go back to Alison and say, hey, we're missing a scenario here. What should be the best course of action? And then Alison would go back, update the design, pass it back to me, and then I would implement based upon that. So works really well.
Yep. So, okay, so that was, thinking about just the welcome messages and everything. Let's see that in action, actually. So any storyboard in progress is going to look like the one that we're going to make today, where I've got some I've got some script written already, but we're going to branch off and we're going to create things that we don't have written yet. And so it's going to reflect actually how much work has been done and how much work needs to be done. Also, Joe has entered the chat. Hello, Joe. Joe is the one who built the web API experience for My Cactus. So I'm glad he's joining today.
Yes.
Yay.
Yeah, in a future episode, he'll actually be on with us and diving through the code for the web API experience. So this is going to be a fun series. We have more content coming your way. So
yeah, we're going all the way to the week before Christmas, people. So buckle up. It's gonna be a long ride. So what about this? This is interesting. So we're about to open storyboards and dive into one of these actions here. But if somebody one shots into the skill, they're opening the skill, and then the skill is performing the correct action. So not only does all of the context that we just talked about in the just launching the skill important, because we're launching the skill. If I ask, Alexa, ask My Cactus to open the blinds, for example, I still need to check whether they even have a cactus, whether it's dead or alive. Is it recently dead? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Everything we just talked about. And then we need to respond with the appropriate context. If they do in fact have a cactus, what happens? What do I do now about the utterance open the blind, since I've verified all of these other things? So let's open a storyboard and do that.
All right. So yes, and just as a reminder, we're using Adobe XD as the software to do the designs, and Alison has provided me with the most recent, most up-to-date final version of the XD file, and so I will be uploading that to the My Cactus GitHub repository shortly after the stream today. So keep an eye on that. And for those of you who are in the Slack group for the Beyond Voice Hackathon, I will be posting an update there once I have finished uploading the XD files to that repository.
Yes. So the things that are going to be in there, you're going to see a template, just like a blank template, printable. There's grids on there for your GUI and everything. So you'll get a blank template, and then you can kind of follow along at home later today. You will get the happy path, the first time user experience, or the FTUE. That will be all storyboarded out, and so then somebody could riff on the storyboards on your own if you want to create your own simulator from the ground up. Write your own happy path in those storyboard templates and then build with us. That would be awesome. So yes. I'm using Adobe XD, but to answer Joe's question in the chat, XD is my choice for a couple of reasons. Mostly because I work with third parties, there's a free version of it. Everybody can use it. So it's not like some other piece of software where there might be an expensive license associated with it just to build files and share them. So I tend to go with those kinds of solutions, but really the format, you can replicate this format in any program you like. I've seen people use like PowerPoint. Um, I tell people, you know what, you use what works for you, and it needs to be shareable with the people who need to have it and understand it, and that's all you need to worry about. But XD specifically, as you're going to see in a future episode, I can really easily, this tool was originally built to do UI prototyping, and over time they have actually built voice tools into Adobe XD. So they do have an Alexa skill where you can test your GUI and test your VUI on the skill. So I'm going to run you through a little prototype setup on XD in a couple of days in episode after next. So we're going to get to work with that. There are other programs that do that though. Sketch will do it. You can also, if you just want a clickable prototype, you could do all of this in any program of your choice, including XD, export it as a PDF, and use Acrobat to create a linked PDF so you at least have like a clickable prototype. So again, XD is super light, and those are the templates that I'm going to share with you, but I don't really, if it fulfills your needs, I don't discriminate. So this works for my needs right now. I am exploring other tools though. So if anybody knows of other tools, I am always using them, and I am encouraging my partners to use lots of different tools and tell me what's working for them, so I can recommend it to everybody. VoiceFlow is another one that I have started working with. That's one that you should check out as well. They built from the ground up as a voice prototyping tool. So check out VoiceFlow as well. That's another good one. And I've actually wanted to port part of this experience over to that, but time, So
Yes.
I like experimenting with tools is what I'm saying. So if you also know of good tools, drop it in the chat and I will check it out for us.
Cool. Yes. Time is limited.
We will put it to, we will put it to the My Cactus test.
Right.
So anyway, just a reminder, here's what we kind of figured out in the last episode. Here's our first storyboard here. Oh, by the way, since there are a lot of states here, and Justin and I had a very extensive script with SSML, which we will talk about later, to work with, I have a numbering system for the way I label my storyboards. You can label these whatever. This is very precise, though. You don't have to do this if your skill isn't going to be that complicated, but do consider. So we open our skill. Again, we always start with the customer. If you didn't see previous episodes, this is how our storyboards start, always with what the customer said. And then their context. The player doesn't have cacti yet, of course, is how we started the last episode. We have a little startup sound effect, which usually I would just put sound notes in here, but I went through and I took the liberty of choosing sound effects for us. These are in the sound library, the Alexa Skills Kit sound library. You have access to these sound effects as well. There are hundreds of them. Every time I go there and go through them, I find something that I didn't see before. Very helpful for improving your skills. And then I write the response. In this case, our cactus isn't speaking yet because our customer doesn't have a cactus. So Alexa reads her little poem and asks the question that will cause her to assign a cactus to you. And then on our next storyboard, you literally say anything. We ask the player where would they visit, if you could go on vacation anywhere in the world, because who does not need an international vacation right now, honestly? And then based on that answer, she will assign you a cactus, and it will have a name, and it will be one of 3 kinds of cacti if you are playing the TBD later APL version. And that's how our cactus starts. And then what happens is we get our cactus's status, and we decided we were going to start the game with our cactus needing something. So our cactus is going to need water, we decided in this first case, but I have created a couple of storyboards for status. There are actually lots more statuses, but those are pretty complicated. I'm going to address those later if we have time. But let's storyboard something a little bit more simple. So I heard my status, and let's say that the cactus needed water. So it says, "Do you want to water Prickly Pete?" And so the player says yes. And then what happens? Actually, let's go with blinds. Let's do the blinds first. So Prickly Pete is cold. Do you want to open the blinds? Yes. Open the blinds. What happens? Well, we would assume that if the player directly asked to open the blinds, or if they said yes, that they have a cactus, but we do need to check to make sure.
Right.
So in this instance, I've already written the script for they have a cactus. So also, if I were to one shot into this place in the skill, Alexa, ask my cactus to open the blinds, we would have to do that check. So the player has a cactus. I'm going to do a little water sound effect. And then I'm going to come up with one of several messages, and we're going to put a randomizer here. So the cactus will say, "Hello, sunshine," or "Let there be light," or something fun like that having to do with open the blinds. They're very happy to see the sunlight.
Right. And one thing to point out on this slide from the developer perspective is that gray box, that context, that is all going to have to be tracked somehow. And because we need to know, like, what's the current state of things, like, does the player have a cactus, and if so, we need to respond differently than if they don't have a cactus. Same thing, like, what if the blinds are already open and the user says open? So as far as the design,
that's my next storyboard.
Yes. Sorry, I kind of jumped there.
No, but I'm glad you said that.
But
that's where we're going.
Cool. Yeah. So like that context, you're gonna have to have a mechanism in your code to keep track of that. And so, like, if you're looking at this going, okay, how does this? Because a lot of questions that we get about storyboard is, how do we take this storyboard and convert it to code? We're going to go into that in a deeper dive in future episodes. But what we'll also be doing is, throughout the streams, I'm going to be pointing out and hinting at, like, we're going to have some code that handles this. And so, if you want to think about it, those gray boxes that say context, that's pretty much what the developer is going to have to come up with a mechanism to keep track of that. And then the randomizers, the prompts, like all the different possible responses that it could come back based upon that context, you're going to have some mechanism in your code that either randomizes or like has a section of random things for a specific situation. So or context. So that is.
Or you could cycle linear through a list too.
Yes. It's up to you as a developer to come up with that mechanism. So.
Yep.
So yes. Sorry. Let's continue on.
No. That was a very good segue. I'm glad you said that. So, by the way, there's one more thing on this storyboard that Justin is going to need to know code-wise, and that is, what does the skill do next? What's supposed to happen after this? What storyboard does it go to? Like, did I ask for input, or what's going on? Do I open the mic? What do I do? So I have my own little just system that I use. I included these in the template so you can use them too, and you might add to them. I've added to these over the years as well. So this one just means that we are automatically routing the player somewhere else that is appropriate, and usually that is the next column over in the storyboard document. So to zoom out here and show you, I am arranging these things kind of in order of the type of message that the player would encounter, in the order they would encounter them, and then I am stacking the variations related to them underneath them. Again, whatever makes sense to you is just fine. That's what works for me, though, and I think it made sense to Justin so far.
Yep. And if it didn't make sense, it was really easy to bring it up, because it's like, hey, in column 4, or you also have them numbered very well too. So it's like 4.7a, there is this situation, but what about this, right? Whereas with the flow chart, it's like, well, how do I speak to that? It's like, well, this little branch over
consult
here.
The decoder ring.
Yes. So
yep.
The fact that these were labeled
also
really easy.
Yeah, also with randomizers, I tend to not put all of the variations in the same box because, as long as we know there's a randomizer there, I can document it. I can document it somewhere else, but which is exactly what I did. Actually, I documented the full script with all of the randomizer banks essentially in one document for Justin. So also, a good question in the chat before I move on to the next storyboard is, what is this big white space for over here? This white space, I will show you what it's for. It's actually, since this is where our GUI is going to go, but we haven't designed that yet. So I will actually go consult my little my own document over here that I'm not showing you, and I will show you an example of that. So let's say when we open the skill and we don't have a cactus, our GUI is going to show something, and that is going to be this. That's an empty pot because our player does not have a cactus yet. So at this stage, however, when I'm not ready to design my GUI yet, I am going to just take notes to myself, or I would be taking notes to the visual designer who would be working on this. In this case, I did both of those jobs. Most people I know do both of those jobs to some degree, and lots of developers I know do all of the jobs. So let's make a note to ourselves what we want to do on the GUI. So there is a cactus. The blinds need to be closed. So we need a blinds closed state. We also decided we have a night and a day mode. So if the blinds are closed during the day, it's going to look different than the blinds closed at night. I could put this in the contextual notes, but it's not actually going to affect the voice experience. It's only affecting the GUI. So I'm actually just going to note it over here that this is different for night and day mode. And then I think that's really all I need in the GUI, aside from the things I know that are going to be there all the time, like the cactus, the name of the cactus, the health meters, and things like that. So I'm just going to note things that are going to change to keep it simple. So those, I'm just going to shove notes over there. But excellent question in the chat, data-driven skills. That big old space is for you to mock up what you're going to be showing on screen. And Justin and Joe thought it was really important to show a cactus you were raising on screen. How silly would it be to not be able to meet your cactus? All right, so Justin just brought up our next storyboard. So what if the blinds are already open?
Right. So in this case, the user said, hey, open the blinds, and they're already open. They have a cactus. So we need a response for that. So
Yep.
here we go.
So if the blinds are, I'm just going to say already open to be very clear that the player messed up. If the blinds are already open, I want to say something like, but the blinds are already open. And then instead of the little bell that we have a little bell that rings a different way, whether you're opening and closing the blinds. Instead of doing that, I want some kind of error effects, like da-dun, something like that, something not too annoying. Maybe we'll pick out some sound later. So we need to say, but the blinds are already open. But they do have a cactus, so it's the cactus saying it. I'm not going to randomize this, so I'm gonna take that note out. So that's also a good discussion worth having. When do I randomize something versus when do I not? Well, how many times am I going to, raising a cactus to maturity, we decided, and we're going to talk about this later, raising a cactus to maturity actually takes about 100 days, I think it was that we said. So how many times in 100 days are you going to water the cactus? Do you want to hear that, like, that's refreshing, or let there be light every single day? Probably not. So we're getting a lot of background noise, are we not? Is that me?
I don't hear anything now. I know
Oh,
earlier you had some background noise that that was out of your
okay.
control. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, so it is. I've got a leaf blower situation outside. Um, so okay, never mind. Anyway, so when I randomize something, it's going to be something that's like it's a message we're going to hear a lot, and actually as a player it can become really annoying to hear the same message over and over and over again. So if it responds the same when you need to say that utterance 900 times in the lifetime of the skill, I don't want to hear the same response 900 times. So I don't think anybody was vacuuming my house. My dog doesn't know how to work the vacuum, I don't think, but she's done strange things before. Uh, so I don't want to randomize, though, an error message, because an error message, it's not going to happen that often. I'm not going to run into it every single day. Chances are, once I get the error message, if I wrote a good error message, and if I've designed the skill in a way that the player understands what's going on, they're not going to hit that many error messages. If I find myself needing to randomize error messages, maybe I have a problem with the skill and not with my script. So with the randomizer. So let's not randomize this error message. We won't do that. So but the blind's already open. If the player does not have a cactus, they are actually going to just get the welcome message, which is the whole introduction with Alexa. So if you open the skill in one shot into anything, Alexa starts out the conversation with her little poem, which, let me pull that up, is...
Yeah, and one thing to note is the likelihood that somebody is going to start the skill without any cactus or anything set up is really low. Especially if they, haven't ever played the game before. It's more likely if they've played the game and maybe they have multiple profiles and they try to one shot into, their skill from a different profile or something of that
Or it
nature.
died.
Right.
And they didn't realize it.
Right, but at that point, the skill should recognize, oh, hey, the cactus was dead, and
Right.
it's still going to take you to the same welcome message with the poem.
Correct. So, and actually, our poem starts out, funnily enough, it kind of sounds like an error message anyway. If you were to say, Alexa, ask my cactus to open the blinds, and you didn't actually have a cactus, it would say, your shelf is empty, but don't despair. I'm here to pair you with the right prickly pear. Like, that sounds like a fine response to what the player said, even though I didn't really intend it that way. It's just the welcome message. So I'm happy with that. And then also, as you pointed out, Justin, if the cactus were dead, we also have a solution for that, which we haven't technically written yet. So let's go back to the blinds. So the blinds will be open in this case because the blinds are already open. And then, of course, we also need to make that in day and night mode. So now I've got quite a few assets going on here with the window. And then we've already written our response if the player doesn't have a cactus, and if it's dead, those are on different storyboards. Did we forget anything? Does anybody think? Is that good for opening and closing the blinds? What else might our player say? So that's open the blinds. Now we have to repeat the same for close the blinds. So
Right, so I think in this case we're going to have opposites, right? So we're going to close the blinds and they're open, and we're going to close the blinds but the situation is where they're already closed.
Yep. So I'm literally just going to copy these over. I'll rename the storyboards to blinds closed. Close the blinds. Alexa, ask my cactus to close the blinds. They have a cactus, but the blinds are open. And then we're gonna say something like, hey, who turned out the lights? And etc., etc., etc. Whatever else I can think of a cactus would say when you close the blind. So success, blinds are closed, and they needed to be closed. We're good. How about close the blinds? Alexa asked my cactus to close the blinds. The blinds are already closed though, but blinds are already closed. And there's our error message for the blinds being closed. So again, let's change our GUI note. The blinds are going to be closed. Here they're going to be open. And then we're good. All right, well, that was pretty straightforward. Gold Zulu says, sorry, your cactus have no arms and legs to close the blinds. True. I mean, my cacti have a lot of arms, but I've never seen them open or close the blinds. That is true. They are not useful arms at all.
Nor do they vacuum or use leaf blowers.
No, they don't. They don't. I wish they cleaned themselves of pests. That would have been great. I would have gotten a lot more sleep last night. So there are some other ways I could have handled this design, and I'm, again, to show the close-up on the storyboards, I'm just rerouting actually back to the status message. So at this point, the skill is going to check the status of the cactus given this new action that I've done. It's going to read me the status and tell me if it needs anything else. And so that's where this storyboard routes to, or that's where the skill routes to after we get the storyboard. I could have actually handled this differently. I could have created a prompt here that says, but the blinds are already open. Do you want to close them, or did you mean to close them? I could have asked that, and then I would handle a yes, no, and the yes response would then lead to that response of, oh, now I've closed the blinds, the cactus response, hey, you turned out the lights. And then a no response would lead to what? Like probably the cactus or Alexa saying okay, and then routing to that response message. So I could have done it differently. I decided not to. I decided just to give the error message and then give the status, because I'd rather redirect the player to information that would be more useful before I ask them what they want to do next. So that was how I chose to approach it, but you could have done it the other way too. But for us, that pretty much wraps up blinds. So let's go take a few minutes to tackle something that's a little bit different. It appears that water would be the same, but I don't actually want that to happen. I don't want water to be identical to closing the blind.
Right.
So
yeah, because then
Justin, do you want to talk about our water mechanic?
Sure.
We'll get a little taste of that component deep dive and talk about what watering means to our cactus.
Yes, and I don't know if that pun was intended or not, but a taste of water. So
no, it was good one.
Yes.
No.
So yeah, like Alison said, it would be boring if repeated the same, rinsed and repeated, keeping with the water theme here, the same mechanic over again for each of the actions that you take in the game. And one of the things that Joe said during our conversations with, coming up with the idea, is that he's accidentally overwatered several different cacti that he's owned, and
rest in peace.
Yes.
Cacti.
So that translated over into our game as a game mechanic. So it's like we could essentially have a mechanic where you could accidentally overwater the cactus. So we give the player the ability to water the cactus whenever they want. But if they give it too much water, the cactus will die. And so we also talked about like going through and warning the player, like, hey, if it's your first time that you're about to overwater it, expose the fact that, hey, are you sure you want to do that? And then if they were to, say yes, and ignore that, then the cactus will die. So um, that is, as Goldsulu says, a watery grave. Um, so
Actually, that's a very good teaser to. I wrote different eulogies based on how the cactus dies, and I believe I do say the cactus has met a watery grave, but we can go back to that. So yeah, we debated on this watering thing, and so let's storyboard that. Let's storyboard some options. So I copied over some light APL GUI to kind of illustrate what's going on here, what we mean by these mechanics. So we have an overall health meter, and then we have a water meter. And if you overwater the cactus, if you fill up the meter and then continue watering the cactus, if it goes over 100 units, it's like instant death. So at least I think we decided it was instant death. So which normally it would be unless you repot the entire cactus, which is really painful because they bite. So we didn't want to simulate that in the game. So it's instant death. We didn't want the rest of that drama. So let's storyboard what else happened. So in an ideal world, the cactus actually needs water, and we water the cactus. It says thank you, or that water is refreshing stuff, whatever it is. And we adjust the health meter accordingly. We play this little drippy drop animation, or just show this status of this GUI screen. Good, all good. Well, what if I don't need water? Let's write that. So I don't have GUI for that yet. So cactus does not need water, and I tend to capitalize things like this for developers to call attention that this is an opposite status of something else. So this does not need water. We're not going to play the drinking sound effect. Or actually, we are. We're going to play the drinking sound effect. But then there will be no response from the cactus. And that's the end of that storyboard, because then it's going to route to our instant death storyboard. So that's all we need to do here. Not a lot we can do at this point. So it didn't need water. Now, let's say we don't want to be this mean. What could I do? Well, if I assume, let's look at this GUI. This cactus is 2 days old. It's likely that our player did not understand that they could overwater their cactus. I don't want to be a jerk, and I don't want people to stop playing because the game is too hard, or they don't understand quite what happened. And honestly, also, if you're a younger person playing this, or maybe you just weren't paying attention, who knows, you might not have caught the fact that, your water meter was full. Maybe you're playing this on a headless device. I didn't tell you how full your water meter was, and you have no way of knowing that until you overwater it. So let's be nicer. Okay? Let's try something else. So, you know what? If I've warned you before, this is a fine response, like instant death, fine. But what if I want to say, they're asking to water the cactus. They have a cactus. The cactus does not need water. But this would be their first time offense, let's say. I'm just going to call it that right now because that fits on the line, and we're all sitting here. We know what this means. So let's do an error effects and say, let's be really explicit and helpful, because that's a cute little 2-day-old cactus, and I don't want my player to kill it. By the way, these cacti are based on some of my real existing cacti. Some of them you can see here. Don't kill my cacti. I'd appreciate it. So let's actually say, no thanks, I'm not thirsty. And then our helpful friend Alexa is going to chime in and tell us what's up about this water situation, because maybe you've never had a cactus before and you don't understand how easy it is to kill it. So we're about to lay some wisdom on you. I'm going to go with my color coding system here. That is Alexa. And then Alexa is going to say something about the water mechanics.
Right. And so
That is helpful.
one thing I want to point out here, as you know, and just sort of plant some seeds here for future episodes. But earlier we talked about the context, being these gray boxes, so that I'm gonna have to create as a programmer a mechanism to keep track of that context. When Alison separates these boxes out with the sort of cyan green color for what the cactus is saying and the blue color for what Alexa is saying, I'm going to need a description or something that like wraps that voice and figures out, okay, this is what the cactus is saying, so we need to wrap this with proper tags to make the cactus speak with its poly voice. And then we're going to have to then make sure that we're using and attaching the Alexa voice as the prompt, right? Because it would be weird if the cactus is speaking and then narrating, using the different voices gives that break in your ear as to, oh, now my cactus is speaking. Now Alexa is giving me directions. And so it splits that up. And so as a programmer, you're going to need some mechanisms in place to be able to detect and figure out, and also to inject any SSML or sound effects that you may have. And so I'll definitely go through and walk through that that code in a future episode. But I just wanted to point out, like, since we're doing a full round trip, start from the design to the development, I want to point out, when you're looking at these storyboards, these are the things that you're going to have to thinking about when you go to implement this. So just wanted to point that out.
Yep. Excellent. And actually, I'm glad you said that. That's a good reminder for me to say also, we've assigned Alexa a certain role in the skill, and that's going to be part of your design too if your skill uses multiple voices. And I would highly encourage it, if it's at all appropriate, to experiment with multiple voices and assign roles to those voices. So the cactus always tells us how it feels, and Alexa is always instructing us and giving us status messages and being helpful. And then she also, speaks when the cactus cannot speak. She eulogizes the cactus. She chooses a cactus for you, so that she wears a lot of hats there. Funeral director, I don't know that she's ever done that before, but she's good at it. You'll see that later. So I could be even more nice. Why don't I, just while we have the time, while we wrap up here, I could be even nicer to this player. Let's make another status as Justin cringes as I add scope. When it's my second to third offense. So again, let's say, no thanks, I'm not thirsty. Actually, no, here's what I want to do. I'm gonna get a little snippy, really, again, with the watering can. And then let's say Fluffy. Let's say Fluffy has this many units of water already. And then let's be really explicit. Let's say Fluffy has this many units of water already. Watering them now will overfill their water with disastrous consequences. Are you sure you want to water Fluffy? To answer a quick question in the chat, the labels that I have on my storyboards, actually, I've abandoned my labeling system for today, but I am pretty explicit in my labels in a numbering system. So I will pick a feature. So feature number 4 is watering, or like action number 4 is watering, and then this will be basically a sub message. So this will be a variation on any of the watering messages. So in this case, actually, 4.1 watering is a successful water. I would call this 4.2 an unsuccessful water. Maybe 4.2 A and B for first unsuccessful water and second unsuccessful water. That's how I number my storyboards. For simpler skills, there's no reason to do that. But this helps Justin and I communicate on the name. So instead of saying, oh, when the cactus is this, and instead of me describing the storyboard and him having to go find it, I can just say, Justin can say, hey, I think I'm missing something. And I'll say, no, it's 4.2B. That's the one that you want. Is that what you're looking for? So that helps us communicate. But if your skill is simpler, calling something water error, there's no shame in that either. So we're going to ask again if we're sure we want to water Fluffy, and then I'm actually going to open the mic where I am expecting a yes/no response. I have a little marker for that that I made to signal to Justin to open the mic and collect a yes/no response. So then I'm going to say if it's yes, then that's going to route to an immediate death. And if it's no, then that's going to route back to the status menu. So I don't need to create any more storyboards, even though I just created 3 more storyboards for Justin to implement here. So that's an option we could do with water. So we're coming up on time, but I do want to go through and show you kind of what's up next really quick. So if we were to continue building these, we have an awful lot of work to do. So our status, we have a few different statuses. I've written the first 2, but there's several. There's like healthy, neutral, sick, and these are health ranges in these health meters I showed you earlier that Justin and Joe and I predetermined would make a good game mechanic. And then we also have dead, and then the announcement of death is different for 3 different causes of death. So we have that to build, and then we have hey, there's the storyboards we just did. So actually, we have goodbye messages, but me and my scope adding, I've added separate randomizers based on morning, afternoon, and night. So there are 3 different randomizers for goodbye messages depending on the time of day. Right. I'm going to need to write those.
Yep. And as a developer, we have to go and make the mechanisms in place to check what time of day it is. And I recently actually implemented those on my personal stream. So when I've been building this out, I stream here on Twitch. Joe streams on his channel as well. And Alison actually has streamed on her personal channel as well, building out the SSML pieces. So that it's interesting that you bring that up, because I recently just implemented that part into the skill. So nice. We had to check, depending upon the time of day when you exit the skill, it changes the bye message.
Sweet. So we also have a ton of badges. So I wrote a lot of poetry for this skill. So Alexa has a very nice announcement when you get a new badge, and there are a ton of those. Of course, there are a ton of other things that I haven't done yet, and I haven't even started recording yet. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next episode. These are going to be things like error messages, all kinds of error messages. What if I say help? It depends on at what point in the skill I said help. So we've got a really good start here, but we are nowhere close to being done yet before we can really start prototyping with this and testing this, and before Justin can really start building this. Although he can start working on the structure that's going to be here, he just won't have responses, and he won't have the full scope of the rabbit hole that we're dealing with on each one of these features until we've storyboarded through all of them. So,
Right. But the nice thing about it is I have an idea of what's coming and what it is that I'm going to need to put in and build. And so, like, I can create, like, okay, here is the mechanism that's going to manage these messages. And then once Allison provides those messages to me, then I can go and fill them into that data structure that I've created for them to be pulled out of randomly. Um, so, that's another nice thing is I don't have to wait for those things to be completed. I can continue working as long as I build it in a way that allows me to plug that information in once I get it.
yep. And we did over the course of doing the first few major chunks of building the skill, we would chat about, is this how, because at this point when I started storyboarding, we were on lockdown, so we were all quarantined, so we really had to share the storyboards back and forth. So, and then there's always discussion about, like, did the designer interpret correctly what everybody thought we were going to build? Did I find a way to add complexity that I didn't think about before that actually makes a better experience? That's a time to debate all of that stuff, is when you're doing this process and you're actually working through all of the odds and ends that you're going to need. And you might discover that you bit off more than you can chew once you start writing all these responses. Or in order to pull off a feature that's super high quality, you need to build the randomizers, and you need to build tons of storyboards to fit all different kinds of little nuanced contexts. And we might decide, like, hey, let's cut scope elsewhere to support this design. So there's a lot of renegotiating that can happen at this phase, but we will also talk about that when we talk about our development process as well. So a few last tips to wrap up, and then we'll talk about what we're doing next. Again, I included sound effects, at least the notes, in these, so everybody's getting a good idea of the full story that we're telling. And then again, I'm also marking some way what the skill is going to do next. That's very important, because Justin needs to know what happens. Are you done storyboarding, or did you already make that storyboard, and where does it go? So also, to answer one of the questions in the chat earlier, again, I use for extensive information architecture where you do have a lot of potential user states, or in some cases, infinite user states. I will always create a numerical system, and that's just a very quick communication tool. So we're all looking at the correct storyboards at the right time. So sometimes you might, a lot of people, rather than diving right into storyboards, they will create an information architecture chart, which is not a flow chart. It's really just getting out there all of the information that the skill is going to have to handle. For example, maybe a map of all of the different statuses and potential user states of just the health of the cactus. That might be a helpful map for me to draw that kind of information architecture. So you might draw that first and then make your storyboards according to that. And then over the course of making your storyboards, you might find more bits and bobs that you forgot in your chart, and vice versa. So again, whatever your style on these, this format is pretty universally ported to any any piece of software you want to use, or just your sketchbook, draw it out in your sketchbook, whatever. We want to make sure we're designing and building a complete skill. And that's in service to delight our player. We want to create a delightful skill, but that also means creating a dynamic skill. We want to communicate with each other what we're building and how we're building it, and then we want to. We have stakeholders. We needed to communicate this to marketing and to my boss, who wants to know how I'm spending my time, and the people who own the Alexa channel that we're streaming on right now want to know what we're streaming about. We use this to communicate. So you're going to see in a PDF in GitHub not too shortly is Justin's going to put in there just a PDF of our happy path. And this is what I actually honestly shared with people when they asked what I was working on, and they had no idea what the skill is. So this is your tool to do that and work through all spots in the design process. So
yes, and Crackmac just asked, Crackmac2, sorry, just asked where we'll be updating or uploading these templates, and I shared the link in the chat, but it will be alexa.design/my-cactus. There's a repository up on GitHub. I'm not exactly sure which folder I'm going to put it in, because this is deployable. You can actually pull it down and use the Ask CLI v2 to deploy it using CloudFormation. And I just need to make sure that that's not in a folder that's going to be deployed. But I will have that up sometime after this stream today, and I will post a message in the Beyond Voice Hackathon Slack group once I have done that. So if you're not already a member of the Beyond Voice Slack group, if you're there is a hackathon going on for that, you can join that and be alerted. You can hang out with people who are participating in the hackathon.
Voice Dev UK is living in my head right now. So before I flipped to the schedule, they asked, do you ever act out or role play a design? That is exactly what we intend to do with these storyboards, because if we can't role play it with the storyboards, then there's no point in prototyping it. There's no point in investing any further unless we're confident that we can just act it out in real time. So I did this back in the day when I was pitching this idea to my boss. I just said, say Alexa, open My Cactus, and I'll just start reading and you respond. And I went through the first time user experience with him. So yes, and it's actually going to be what we're going to do next week. We're going to throw all of the utterances we can think about. We're actually all going to quote unquote play the skill together. And I will scramble over here behind my curtain and try to make sure that I wrote the correct response in a storyboard that exists already. If it doesn't exist, we're going to make it. So that's exactly what we will be doing on Friday. And then we're going to be ready to prototype. So then next week we will actually have, we can build a really clean prototype that we've already tested.
Yes.
Again, the resources are on GitHub. Justin has shared that link. And then again, we're gonna see if our design is robust enough next week or on Friday.
Yes.
If I'm not calling it tomorrow, I'm calling it next week, but it's Friday.
Yes. This Friday.
We will be back Friday.
And then on starting next week, we'll actually be starting to go through, dissecting the code that we created. So I think that's the episode that Joe will be joining us. So, and yes, thank you, Crackmac2, for sharing the link to join the Alexa Beyond Slack in the chat. Yes.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you Friday. I believe it's Friday the 13th.
Yes, it is.
Is it not?
Yes.
So we'll see how that goes. It'll be a great day to break a skill design, let me tell you. So we will see you back Friday the 13th. It is lovely to have all of you.
Right. Let's
break
the skill design. Let's hope the stream stays nice and up.
Right. Let's not break the stream.
Right. Oh, data-driven skills' brother was born. Cool.
Ooh.
To your brother? Well, it's early, but I'll have to remember. Friday. Cool. All right. Well, thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.